Okay, so today we are going to be talking about genes, both genetic differences within humans, genetic differences between species. How is this relevant for psychology? Something as complex as who you have sex with, or your personality, or your risk for mental illness. What's going on here? So to begin with, we want to start with some really basic background information just to make sure that everyone's on the same page. So what I have at the top of this schematic here is a picture of a cell, and inside all of the cells in your body is your genome, the entirety of your genetic material, the entirety of your DNA. So humans have generally, with exceptions, 23 pairs of chromosomes. 22 of those are the autosomes, and then you have your sex chromosomes, X and Y. And the chromosomes are tightly bundled genetic material. So like I said, humans can differ sometime in their number of chromosomes. They can differ in whole sections of this DNA that are deleted or inserted in the wrong place. And then you also have what are commonly referred to as SNPs, like scissors snipping something, but it's SNP, single nucleotide polymorphisms, and that's where humans differ in a single DNA letter. And these arise because DNA is copying itself, and you can have copy errors. You can have mutations that arise over time. And this is the substance of evolution, and it is the basis that is genetic difference between people. So what are these genes doing? Well, when you hear the phrase genes are coding for something, what genes are doing is they're coding for proteins that the cell needs to do its cellular functions. So the DNA is read by the cell and turned into proteins. And that is often really far afield from the sorts of things that psychologists are interested in, right? So my background, if you remember, is in clinical psychology. I, for instance, used to work with teenagers with eating disorders, right? Girls with anorexia nervosa. How do you get from genes coding for proteins to something as complicated as a mental disorder that requires you to be hospitalized because you're no longer eating food? And that is often one of the great mysteries, one of the great scientific challenges of my field, which is behavior genetics. Not just do genes make a difference for behavior, but how do they make a difference for behavior? So I want to give you an example of how we can go from genes coding for proteins going to more complicated human behavior and what we might study as psychologists with a specific example. For those of you who do drink alcohol, some of you experience this red flushing reaction. Why is that? Well, alcohol is actually quite intensive for your body to metabolize and get rid of. Your liver has to work pretty hard to get rid of it. This is why people who are chronically alcoholic often have liver problems. And if you have an enzyme in your liver that doesn't metabolize alcohol as efficiently as other people do, then a toxic byproduct of alcohol can build up in your body. And one thing it does is it can make your face flush red. In extreme cases, it can be so uncomfortable that people avoid drinking entirely. So, but think about, where does that enzyme come from? That enzyme is coded for by a gene, and people can vary in their genes coding for this enzyme. And what we see is that genetic difference, which is translated into an enzyme difference, ultimately predicts a behavioral difference, because people who flush a lot when they're drinking drink less alcohol, they drink it less frequently, and they're less likely to get addicted to alcohol over time.